The Equi principle is a very important concept in utility theory that says that a consumer would maximize his total utility and total welfare and would also maximize his total consumer surplus when he would consume such number of units. Let's say there are two goods, such number of two goods where the marginal utility per dollar spent on one good is equal to the marginal utility per dollar spent on the other good. And that's the point where you should stop substituting, let's say, X for Y or Y for X, and his total income, and it assumes that his total income would also be exhausted. And that's the point where his maximum utility is gained. So let's say if the Equi principle is met at 3 units of X and 2 units of Y. So what this means is the consumer is buying 3X and he's also buying 2Y at the same time. But the Equi principle in our example is actually met at the third unit of X and the second unit of Y. So when the consumer buys the third unit of X and the second unit of Y, that's the point where the marginal utility per dollar spent on both goods is equal, and that makes the consumer indifferent between the two goods, right? That's sort of equating his marginal utility per dollar spent on X and Y, and ultimately ends up buying 3X and 2Y. But here we are assuming that he's, exhausting his total income. But what if the Equi principle is met at 3X, that is the third unit of X and the second unit of Y, but at the same time it is also met in the utility schedule, it is also met on the fifth unit of X and the fourth unit of Y. So in this case, the consumer equilibrium would not be at 3X and 2Y, assuming that his income is not exhausted at the third unit of X and the second unit of Y. So if the income is not exhausted at the third unit of X and the second unit of Y, although the Equi principle is met at the third unit of X and the second unit of Y, but he will still go on substituting X for Y and Y for X, and he would increase his consumption of X and Y unless a point comes where the Equi principle is met again. So the Equi principle, let's say in our example, could again be met at the fifth unit of X and the fourth unit of Y, and let's say this is the point where the total income is exhausted. So this is basically the point of consumer equilibrium. 3X and 2Y was not his consumer equilibrium. His total utility was not maximized at that point, although the Equi principle was met at the third unit of X and second unit of Y. If the Equi principle is met at at another point as well, there's a third point where the Equi principle is met. Let's say at 7X and maybe 5Y. But in this case, this combination is not possible. Although the Equi principle is met at the 7th unit of X and the 5th unit of Y. But this combination is not possible because his income is exhausted. So the Equi principle, which was met at a combination of 5X and 4Y, or the 5th unit of X and the 4th unit of Y, that was the consumer equilibrium. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you all around in the next video. Until then, take care.